Welcome to In a Nutshell, the podcast dedicated to all things agricultural consulting. I'm Dylan Brush here with soil genius and ag consultant Bill Brush, and we're delighted to accompany you on this journey where we break down the different aspects of agricultural consulting. In each episode, we'll dive into the realm of agriculture through the eyes of Bill Brush, where consultants like Bill play a vital role in empowering farmers, agribusiness, and agricultural organizations. If you're passionate about agriculture, problem solving, and enjoy a little bit of detective work, this podcast is tailor-made for you.
Hi, Bill Brush again, back with In a Nutshell. The thing I want to talk about today, something I was just doing as early as today when I was out and working on an orchard that was not performing up to the client's satisfaction. And in fact, he wasn't really a client, but I guess he is now because I'm working on his field. So, and it's going to be talking about problem areas and problem fields. So, and when you're looking at how am I going to make a correction on that problem, the first thing you got to ask yourself is, how big is that area? How much can I make it better? And is it worth the extra effort to actually even do anything differently? A good example is this guy has 1,000 acres of dryland wheat. And over in one corner, he has 1.5 acres out of 1,000 that is really poor. Is it worth the extra effort to go out on 1,000 acres and work on 1.5 acres? Probably not. But if I had, for a couple of reasons, one, the value of the crop, how much if I got it up there, how much would that actually put additional income into my pocket? And that's why I say it comes down to some actual monetary rewards or deficits, putting in more money than I'll ever get back. And so second, if it is significant, say it's 5 acres out of 20, well, that's 25% of my little farm that is not performing. And I could do way better if I could get it to get up and improve. So that's why I say the size and scope and how much it means to you. And next then, once you've decided it is, are you willing to farm it separately? In other words, do a whole different program for that affected area or weak area while you get it to be up to the same area as the rest of the field, And are you willing to usually spend more money on it to get it up there and going? Sometimes, and some farmers are very proud of their fields, and it just bugs them every year to see the small area of their field that underperforms. And maybe their neighbors come over and says, "What's wrong with that?" And they get tired of hearing it, and it's worth it. Whether it makes any sense monetarily, they still say, "I want to fix it." So the first thing, and this shouldn't be a shock if you've listened to these podcasts before, what are we going to start with? We're going to start with a soil sample, but we're going to make it a little bit more specific to just that bad area. Now, if we've been sampling through this and just incorporating that with everything else, which we probably have, then what you really want to do is sample that area separately and also make sure you sample everything else that's around that field separately from the affected or the problem area. Because what you've done over the years, if you just put it in there, you've made your better look worse and your worse look better. And so it's very difficult to say, I can't see that should be a problem, when in fact, if you sample it separately, you could easily see the problem. Okay? So we do these soil samples very, very random across that area, same as you do around the rest of the field. And then once we've done that, sent it off to the lab and got our data back, we start to analyze the data. And the first thing we're going to look for is the deficiencies. But one thing that a lot of people overlook a lot of times is they don't always look at excesses and how those excesses affect the other nutrients. So we're going to look for not only deficiencies but also excesses and see how they work, either because they're too short or because they're interacting with something else and making it sort of a false shortage in the plant. One of the ones I know that I've looked at for years, and it's hard to imagine, but the the two micronutrients, iron and manganese, are very, very sensitive to one another. Once manganese gets over, in meaning having more parts per million in your soil sample than your iron, you will show a manganese-induced iron chlorosis, or you'll have a total yellowing of that entire tree or that entire crop that you've got there, okay? And here's the funny part, is when you send it to a lab, those tissues, because you know it's iron deficiency, it will show you have plenty of iron most times. Not 100%, but most times it will show you if your manganese has more parts per million than your iron, it will show you have plenty of iron in the plant. And you do. But the problem is that the manganese will oxidize or make that iron unusable to the plant. And because of that, the plant can't get to the iron, shows the classic iron chlorosis and the yellowing of the leaves, and it looks, like I say, horrible. You would never know that. You would say, well, my iron's fine, my manganese is fine, but my manganese is higher than the iron. So it's a really looking at not just excesses, but how they relate to the other nutrients. You can get some products where you'll have a combination of sodium and potassium. If they get too much, they take up more room on the soil colloid. They might be bumping out magnesium or dragging the calcium number down. And if you get them up too high, they will also create deficiencies in other micronutrients. So they're all interrelated. You just need to know exactly how one relates to the other one. So it's looking at the data and analyzing it and finding those deficiencies, finding the excesses, and then develop a plan. And then the next thing, when you develop a plan is really ineffective if you don't execute it. And that's why I said you want to get that commitment early on that you're willing to farm that area or that portion of the field or maybe even the whole field differently than you've been doing. You've got to have that commitment, because perfect plan, no execution, no change. So the goal is always to improve that poor area of that field, that poor section, or even improving the entire ranch. And so you have to say, okay, I'm willing to do what it takes to fix this. And you develop the plan and then make sure that you execute the plan. The other thing that can come up, and I've had this happen to me many times, I think I have an idea what might be the problem. I take the soil samples. The soil samples do not show enough difference to really be any different. There should be no difference in this. It should perform as well over in that area as it is in some other area, based on what's in the soil, the components of the soil, how everything's put together. And so then the next thing is, what do you do? Say, well, I don't know what's wrong, and go? Or do you say, let's look at the next most important thing, which is, let's look at drainage. Let's look at compaction. Let's look at contamination, something that's not tested for in your samples, or just something that's coming in off. Could be as much as silt, which is clogging up a lot of the pore spaces and not allowing it. Maybe it's the slope. Water drains over the top of it or stands on it for weeks at a time. Anything that might affect irrigation or the way that plant can take up nutrients and water is going to impact that. So when you look at a part that you have bad drainage, it rains and the water stands in that bad area. Well, no wonder it's bad. It's because the water stands there. What's creating it? Is it an imbalance of calcium, magnesium, getting our calcium high enough and our magnesium low enough so that we have good porosity so that it accepts water and moves through the soil profile? Maybe it's a compaction layer, a hard pan layer, something that nobody's ever went down. Well, the cheapest, easiest way is to go out there with a backhoe and start digging down and finding out what that soil profile looks from about, from the top soil, ground level, all the way down to 8 feet or so, and see what's in there. It's not hard to dig a hole. And if it is hard to dig a hole, you've got some huge compaction that, without breaking it up and getting it broken into smaller, so we have areas that can drain, it's going to just stay that way forever. It's very similar, and I've seen things, I swear, they're harder than concrete, because I've hit it with a sledgehammer and it doesn't do anything, and I've hit concrete with a sledgehammer and at least makes a mark. So it's so hard that we need, water just can't get through that. So when we're looking at that, you can save a lot of time. I've done this a lot on a guy's going to plant a new permanent crop. He's been a row crop farmer, and he wants to know how deep he should rip this. Well, do you have compaction? Well, I don't think so. Well, let's rule that out. So we'll go out and we'll dig a series of random holes throughout that. Or if the farmer's got good knowledge, anywhere where the water stood when you row cropped, that's a spot you want to dig a backhoe pit from. And we get down there, and I actually do a lot of teaching once we get down into a soil pit like that and show them where the compaction layer is. Or in a couple of cases where there isn't any real reason to burn a lot of diesel and rip this really deep, because the soil was so friable down from 3 foot on clear to 8, 9, and even 10 feet deep. It was just very, very pliable and not going to have any trouble with compaction. And yet up at about 28 to 30 inches where they worked a lot of their tillage on the row cropping, we had a slight hard pan layer, which we were able to do that with a lot less horsepower and a lot less deep shank that we had to pull. And we were able to correct that, and we never did rip that piece. But to give you the rest of the story, we did another field for that same grower in the following year. We found compaction. So here's somebody, I told him 1 year, oh, no ripping more than just down here, and we can just chisel that at that level. And the next year I tell him we got to get down to 5.5 feet, and they were really impressed, because one of the things they said, we've always had trouble with that part of the field, and they had never ripped it that deep. So they also planted trees. Trees did excellent in that, and they were always well drained. And so you can create a lot, stop them before they get to problem field. Once the field's a problem, then we have to figure out what's wrong and how can we get to it. Trees are planted for the long haul, so you don't want to, well, I got a problem, I got to put up with it for 25 years or longer. And instead, it's better to mitigate it before you plant them. And if you can't, then we try to find a way to make the soil chemistry work for you and do the best that we can, and try to find a solution that's there. I know that everyone at some time or another has had a problem area in their field, and I know I have. And there was a point where I didn't have the information that I now have, that I would have done things much differently if I'd have known exactly what I know today. So I'm hoping to add some of that experience and knowledge to you, so that you're doing these things ahead. And get yourself a good advisor that's familiar with good soil testing. It is what we use, the basis for what's in that soil, and we rely on it. And it's been very, very consistent in the results that we get from the soils, so that we can make a true difference in farming, and even in your garden, or even in your lawn, or wherever it is that you want to take your time to grow something. So hopefully that'll give you a little insight on how you should look at problems, how you should correct them. And don't forget, you may not have a problem today, or you don't have a shortage today, but certain nutrients leach. Sulfur, boron, thank goodness sodium leaches. Those are the 3 primary ones that will move through the soil profile. And so when you get your soil test, you don't have a shortage. You just have an adequate amount. You don't have an excess, but you have an adequate. And as soon as you go through the winter, now you have a shortage just when these trees or permanent crops are waking up. And now you do have a shortage. So remember that there's always understanding not only just what you have at that point, that's really what it is, a point in time, and keep a good track of what you had last year. Did I use any of my material up? And then if I did use it up, how do I replenish it? What's the easiest way? And get your advisor to help you, if it's boron, when do I need it? When can I put it on? And what's the best source? through my irrigation system, dry material on the ground, just on and on. There's multiple ways to do it, and you pick out the spot with your advisor that tells you the best way to get that done. So I'm going to stop there for today. But problem areas are always an eyesore. It seems like, and don't ask me why but this seems to be the case. If you have a bad spot, if you have something that doesn't look right, it's always out by the road, so that your neighbors and everyone driving by bugs you about it all the time. And as farmers, we're very proud of what we do. And so because of that, after a while, you get tired of hearing that, and and so we want to get it fixed. And it has a personal satisfaction to fix that, so that it doesn't become an eyesore, and you get a great deal of satisfaction of making those comments go away. So hopefully this was pertinent to what you may be running through right now. And so hope to hear from you on questions. And also until next time, stay curious.
Thank you very much for another absolutely wonderful episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell, Bill. I'm sure that everyone enjoyed listening to what you had to say about problem fields and problem areas in those fields. For all you listeners, I want you to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and always remember to stay curious.